Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by thesoberclub.com. I'm Genuinely Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi and welcome to the podcast. We are 2 years old. Can't believe it. Actually, I missed the actual date. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. But it's just incredible. 2 years of the Alcohol Free Life podcast. You know, when I started this podcast, I know I've told you before, but I did it because I was a year sober, and I was at that point where I still wanted masses of inspiration. I now realise I always will, because I was really noticing that both for myself and for other people I talked to, there were so many layers, so much to unravel. And anyone who is sort of thinking, oh, wow, once you get to a year, that's it, nothing else good happens. You've heard me say a lot that the best is always yet to come. And that's what's so amazing about this journey. But when I got to a year sober, I was so into the podcast. They were what were keeping me uplifted, really, and helping me start to look at all sorts of other areas of my life that I wanted to kind of improve. And I'd kind of run out of a podcast to listen to. I mean, I know they come around regularly, but I just figured, why don't I do my own? And of course, I knew that I was in a lucky position to be able to get some great guests. So I figured I would do a series or do a few and just kick it off. I mean, if I'd stopped and thought about it for too long, I probably would have, or even for a while, probably would have done it differently. I probably would have done, a short series, and I'd have tried to get some sponsorship, and I'd have probably done it a bit more formally. But I didn't. I just went headlong into it and thought, listen, we'll throw it against the wall, see if it sticks. And I genuinely had no idea if I would get any listeners at all. And in a way, I didn't really mind, because I figured it's going to help me being able to talk to these people. And it most certainly did. And, I'm really proud of it. Those first podcasts totally rocked it, and on. And my goodness, what is it, 115 episodes or something like that? It's an incredible achievement, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you so much to those of you who, well, everyone, whether you're brand new listening this week or whether you listened from the beginning. You've been a massive part of this for me, and so many people have let me know what the podcast has meant to them. I often get messages saying, it's my Friday treat, and I love listening to it. And also the diversity of the podcast, I think, is one of its strengths. And sometimes I think, oh, shall I run this podcast on a particular topic? And I always get great feedback from people saying, well, I didn't even know I was interested in that, but you've managed to get the right expert to make it interesting. So we really do cover a massive range of topics. Obviously, everything, in my opinion, is underpinned by that sobriety piece. And as you know, this podcast is for you, whether you're just sober curious and you're just kind of thinking about this, or whether you've been sober for years, because, as we said last week when we were talking about Marion Keyes celebrating her 27th year sober, just keeps getting on, just getting better and better every year. And there's always something new, another layer to unwrap. And so anyways, that's me waxing lyrical about my own thing. And I thought that what would be really nice this week is just to do a little bit of a throwback and throw a few little clips from previous episodes. So, obviously out of 115 episodes, I can't choose my favourites necessarily. But I literally picked relatively at random a bunch of podcasts that I knew fitted a theme. And so I just thought I'd bring you a few little clips of those. But before I do that, I must tell you that my book has landed. Wow, what a week it's been. It's so exciting, honestly, getting your book in your hand, the actual book. I mean, I've written 5 books over the years. My first one was, 15 years ago, Imperfectly Natural Woman. And I've written several others. And and I've done lots of ebooks as well, but there's something about holding that physical book in your hand. It's really magical. And I'm it just arrived today. The actual publication date is February the 11th. So if you've ordered it, hopefully it will be, if you pre-ordered, hopefully it'll be with you quite soon. And, though I say so myself, it's great. I'm bound to say that, aren't I? But it is mostly because it's not just me. Of course I share my story, and there's a huge section on how to get the buzz without the booze, which I'm really proud of. It will hopefully really help people to nail those early weeks when everything is just so out of balance. But there are things you can do to make that time flow much more easily and to help with that brain chemistry piece. So there's loads of really very practical stuff, both, from a physical perspective, physiologically, emotionally, it's all in there. But then the second part of the book, it's a huge lifestyle section, really. And I am really blessed to have had some amazing contributors. It really isn't just me. So when I show off about the book, I feel I'm entitled to, because I'm promoting a load of other people. And some of them have been podcast guests. So, I'm really, really grateful to some of the people who've contributed to this book. The list is, it's too big to mention. I thought maybe over the next few weeks I would, maybe pick out bits and bobs from the book and from contributors. But just off the top of my head, just to name a few who are in there, Janet Thompson has done a piece on looking at kind of weight. I stumble over that because it's very much not about weight loss. It's about weight management and taking a really different perspective on that. So that's Janet's piece. Star Keshara has given us some fabulous recipes. Star's thing is all about the facelift diet. Laura Willoughby from Club Soda, who many of you will know, has written a piece for us, and Millie Gooch, who has her own book out, Millie from Sober Girl Society. And then, of course, William Porter, author of Alcohol Explained, has done a couple of pieces in the book, actually, a really great explanation of exactly what cravings are and what's going on for us physically and emotionally. There's a piece in the book from Dr. Gemma Newman, the plant power doctor, who, by the way, is on my podcast in a week or so's time. There's Camille Vidal from La Maison Wellness, so he's offering great recipes for alcohol-free cocktails. And then I've got a whole bunch of stuff on the menopause. Lucy Blenkensop has contributed some stuff on the menopause. There's lots on nutrition, including Katie Ruan, the family naturopath, and Kira Jean Roberts from Wholly Aligned. We've got a section on fitness and relationships, a section on creativity written by Sharon, the London artist. What else have we got? Stress management, managing emotions. Honestly, there's so much in here. You really would be hard pressed if you can't find a ton of wellbeing stuff that you're interested in. So hope I've given that a good plug. It's called Happy, Healthy, Sober, Ditch the Booze and Take Control of Your Life. And of course, forward by Denise Welch. So very pleased to get that as well. So it's an exciting week. It's a real thing. It's a real big thing, having your book come out. And on the week that your podcast is 2 years old. So that's my happy news. So anyways, I thought I'd bring you these little clips. Some of them you'll have heard before, and they're only bite-sized little bits. So you might, if you're interested, they might spur you on to go back and listen, find that podcast and go back and have a listen. As you know, you can get the pods wherever you always do, or if you're brand new to this and you're kind of almost found it by accident, you can get the whole lot of them at thesoberclub.com, just /podcast. So I thought what I'd do is choose this theme that is, pretty much on everyone's minds right now, which is what's going on with our emotions and our mental health and well-being, our emotional state. And of course, it's a topic that I cover with most of my guests, but I thought I'd see if I could pick out just a few clips from previous interviews where over the months, and of course many of these were recorded before lockdown, so obviously bear that in mind. But over the months, I've asked different guests and different experts about their take on a certain aspect of well, how our thoughts create our reality, and just the impact of our emotions on what we're trying to do, on behavior change, on self-improvement. You know, we all know, don't we, that ditching the booze and moving forward into this new life, which is what it is actually, it's about way more than just not drinking. Of course, that underpins everything, that thing that you don't do. But what's much more important is focusing on what are you going to do. So I thought I'd play you this clip with Dr. David Hamilton. I mean, I've known David for so many years as a fellow Hay House author. I absolutely love his books. I love his take on kindness. He wrote Why Kindness is Good for You. He wrote I Heart Me, where he was talking about how, although he had been talking about self-love, forever and a day, it didn't really mean anything to him personally. And I really resonated with that. And what's interesting about David, of course, is that he was a scientist. He was a biochemist. And it was actually his experience of working with pharmaceutical drugs and looking at the placebo effect that first got him interested in the power of the mind and the power of our thoughts, when he discovered that, I'm not trying to tell his story for him, but many of you know it already, and he has shared it on the podcast. The fact that he discovered that with the pharmaceutical company that he was working for, the teams, the groups that trialed the placebo drugs had, well, an almost identical success rate to those who had the actual drug. And, from the drug company's perspective, if they get 80% of people, let's say for sake of argument, feel better, well, that's fantastic. But he started to get really curious as to, well, okay, so 80% of people feel better when they take that medication, but 78% were on the placebo. They just didn't know that they had the placebo, and they felt better too. So clearly the power of the mind, clearly of the power of thought, came in there. So that's when he started his whole new career, and he's so inspirational. I absolutely love his work. And I interviewed him on, I think it was episode 6 on the podcast, so early on, and then again on a later podcast, talking about how we can really put into place habit change, actually change our habits. So in this little clip, I asked him about this thing that happens to all of us, this inner talk, this inner critic that tells us we aren't good enough. And how do we deal with this inner talk then, which of course we all have, don't we? We've all got that little voice telling us to, oh, go on, you have that 15th Jaffa cake or whatever it is, go on. Or, you're not good enough. We'll talk more about that little voice later. But we've all got the voice. We've all got the inner critic, the inner voice. So is it about, do you think, really noticing that? And then actually asking, well, is that true? In other words, separating yourself a little bit from that constantly nagging voice in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you nailed it in terms of how I look at things. Step number 1 is notice it, be aware of it. Unless we're aware of a behaviour, it's difficult to change it. So for me, the moment I notice something, I start to question it. There's a couple of different ways I do things. It depends on the context, depends on the situation. But sometimes what I have is a little phrase, a little one-liner that reminds me that I can do this or something along those lines. And so whenever I become aware of myself behaving in a certain way, I'll stop and take a breath. And what the taking the breath does is it moves resources to the front of the brain. So you stop running on default. So you immediately bring the resources to that. So I take a sharp intake of breath sometimes, and I say my little phrase, right? And now most of the time that's enough. But other times when I find that it just goes back, and that's normal for some people, as it just knots back, then I start to inquire. I might take a piece of paper and inquire, why do I feel this way? Why do I behave in this way? Sometimes I just inquire about why I believe certain things, and it usually takes me back to thoughts or assumptions that I've made in the past without realising. And so I guess it's diving into your own beliefs, and usually I'll recognise a thought, a belief, or an assumption that I've picked up unconsciously maybe, or just assumed. And I'll say, oh my God, I can't believe I really thought that. That was when I was 10-year-old or 15 or a child, when I didn't really understand the world the way I understand it now. So of course that's not true. Yeah. And it's almost like your awareness of it shines a little light on it. And then I find if I just keep attention on that over the next couple of days, on reminding myself that that's actually not true, this is true instead, then it becomes much easier to change a pattern because I've almost gone deeper into something that was controlling it. And when I do that, then then that little voice doesn't even come back as much.
So check out those podcasts with David Hamilton, and let's all of us just remember that, you know, that inner voice will always be there because it's there to kind of protect us, but we can get used to noticing it and challenging it, you know, and asking, is that really true? When that inner voice has just told you that you look terrible, or that you'll never complete anything, or that you're boring, or that you can't possibly be fun without alcohol, whatever the voice is saying, let's just challenge that and actually ask, well, is that really true? Because most of the time it isn't. And when we can learn to speak back to that inner critic, you know, it gets a little quieter over time. So we're talking emotions, of course, whenever we're talking about mental health and wellness stuff. And I think it's really dawned on me over the last couple of years of doing this podcast that those of us who started drinking at an early age, maybe in our teens, are really quite emotionally immature. It sounds like a terrible thing to say, but it's really true, because for so many years, every big thing in our life, every important moment has been supported or fueled by alcohol. So, you know, when we first, I don't know, fell in love, when we had important occasions, whether it was, you know, babies being born or marriage or, you know, deaths, funerals, everything. You know, alcohol was the societal glue that sticks everything together. So all of our emotional times, if someone broke up with us, we'd probably choose to have a drink. If we felt upset or angry, we'd choose to have a drink. If we were celebrating something, we felt happy, we'd choose to have a drink. And consequently, over time, kind of come to realize that we're really not very good at handling our emotions, because we've been taught from a very young age that they're all real bad, or rather the bad ones are. So it's much easier just to want to numb out. And when we do start to feel afraid or stressed or angry or fearful, whatever it might be, then our answer, our sort of default position is, you know, reach for a glass of wine or whatever is your, you know, was or is your drink. And I loved last year interviewing Carla McLaren. She's author of the book Embracing Anxiety, and I loved her approach. On one level, it's tremendously obvious, and on the other level, I thought it was really profound. We did a long interview, and she really she was super helpful. She also did a piece for the Sober Club. This was episode 83, if you want to listen back to this in full. And, you know, I asked Carla about our emotions and how we should deal with them. So is it possible then for someone to be able to literally embrace all of their emotions, including anxiety, and be able to work with them and I don't know, maybe feel really quite balanced, whereas many of us feel very up and down too much of the time? Yes. And I've got a whole community now of people who I've trained in this work. And it's just lovely because, you know, we'll come and say, well, I was feeling some grief and this, and we'll all say, awesome. And we'll say to each other, that was some beautiful shame that you just used right then. I'm just like really watching you in your shame. That treating these things, treating emotions as aspects of cognition, and your basic intelligence or genius even, means that all of them are your friends. So I could write a book called Embracing Shame, Sadness, Grief, you know, to embrace all of them. And for me, it's also, it kind of creates an inner, you know, people say inner peace first and then world peace. If we've been taught to avoid and suppress and hate basic aspects of our own humanity, of our own cognition, then it's going to be very hard for us to create anything other than war in the world. So I think this is a
I was right when I was little. Emotions are the problem, but not in the way that I thought.
Yeah.
Right? It's people's emotional skills that are the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So check out more of Carla McLaren's work. I've found it super useful to download her free chart. She's got this kind of emotions chart. And sometimes I just glance at it, and if I'm feeling anxious and I can't even place why, I'll kind of have a look at her chart. And she often says that anxiety is often, for example, really about the need to focus and to plan. It's often linked to overwhelm. And sometimes even just that little realization can change everything. If I wake up and I've got this real sense of anxiety, I mean, notwithstanding everything that's going on at the moment, right? But sometimes we just have to stand back, and rather than pushing that emotion away instantly, which is what we're so used to doing, it's like, oh, that doesn't feel very nice, go away. Actually just sit with it and say, well, what is it trying to teach me? And it's really helped me to realize that sometimes the anxiety is linked to emotion and is linked to overwhelm, and the fact that I actually just need to either get some support or put some planning in place so that I'm not overwhelmed. So anyways, I really hope you enjoy her work. The next little clip I wanted to bring you, I think is a really important one. When the lockdowns first started, immediately we started to hear about people's mental health and the huge rise in issues. Young people especially was one of the most heartbreaking things to hear, and of course it's got worse, far worse than any of us could ever have imagined. It honestly is heartbreaking when you look at what's going on. I've got close friends who have kids who are really, really suffering, and there's a waiting list of, God knows, 9 months or something before they can even get an appointment anywhere. We know that the rise in suicides is notable, and I don't know that enough people are really talking about this still. So I really appreciated being able to speak to Neil Shah, who is from the Stress Management Society. They do a huge amount of work around mental health issues and stress management, of course. And we discussed a lot. It's really worth going back and having a listen to Neil's episode. It feels very current, even though it was actually around 8-9 months ago. It was episode number 72. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about suicides. We talked about all kinds of stuff around mental health. And then I asked Neil about people who are just do not have the motivation to even manage to kind of get themselves out of the funk, if you know what I mean. And I loved his answer. It was super helpful. So it's Neil Shah. If there are people who are listening who are even just hearing that makes them feel more stressed because they don't feel positive enough right now, what would be your tip for anyone who really feels that they're struggling right now with their mental health? I've heard people say that they don't feel, they just haven't got the motivation. They don't have that brain space and it kind of almost adds to it that, oh my God, I need to do this, I need to do that. What can we do? Is meditation the answer? Is mindfulness the answer? Is it looking to nature? What would be your number one?
No, and it's a really, really good point. I think it's important that we do cover this because there's a lot of people out there that are probably thinking to themselves, oh, that's great. It's a very grand vision, but I'm struggling to get myself out of bed every day. I think this is where it's important that we've got some simple things that we can incorporate into our daily routine.
Yeah.
As the acronym KISS suggests, keep it stupidly simple. Some people say keep it simple, stupid. I don't like that to call people stupid. So keep it stupidly simple. 5 areas actually that I would suggest that we look at: mental, physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. Let's go through them one by one. So mental, what can we do to focus our mind? Focus our mind on things that are going to serve us and uplift us, not focusing on the news and social media, which is going to bring you down. So firstly, what can we do and what can we remove? I would suggest either limiting or removing social media. One of the things I've done, other than for professional reasons, I've come off social media the last month because I was just finding all the information, all the drama, all the stories, all the fake news, etc., was just bringing me down. I check the actual news, BBC News, once a day. And so I'm limiting the amount of information I'm being exposed to, and I'm only doing that just to keep abreast of anything important or anything that I really do need to be aware of. Also, WhatsApp groups. I found that there's a lot of my groups, friends, family, colleagues, where people were circulating and sharing a whole lot of nonsense information. And so I've politely requested people stop doing that. And where that hasn't happened, I'll remove myself from WhatsApp groups, which I'll re-add myself to later. And instead of that, I'm introducing in more practices to mentally focus my mind on things that are positive. So one of the things that you could do is just at the end of every day, when you get into bed, keep a journal next to your bed, write down 5 things you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And if you can't think of anything else, if you're getting to bed, if you're going to sleep in a bed, you can be grateful for that you're in a bed. If you've eaten some food today, then be grateful for that. If you don't have coronavirus, that's another great thing to be grateful for. There are so many things to be grateful for. Or it could be something wonderful happen, and you can put that down. And doing that, particularly at night when you're going to sleep, it's ending your day with things to be happy for. So that's kind of having a positive impact on your mental focus.
So check out Neil's work at the Stress Management Society. And one of the podcasts that I did quite early on, it was episode, I've got it written down here, 43, where we were talking about personality types and how interesting it is that once we ditch the booze, we, as we've already said earlier in this show, we start to notice our emotions. We start to take more notice of our own behaviours and what makes us tick. And when it's not all covered up by booze, we do start to get a sense of who we really are. A lot of people say that they find that they start to like themselves, right? And I'm absolutely convinced that being sober makes you more kind. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So, but there is this lovely thing of sort of getting to know yourself all over again. And again, as I mentioned before, when I was talking about being emotionally immature, many of us don't really know who we are without booze, because if we started drinking very early on, perhaps, as I was saying, our teens or early 20s, we've lived a large part of our adult lives, depending on our age, under this haze of booze. And so when we take that away and we have to experience life in glorious technicolor, of course that's going to mean the good alongside the bad. And it's only then that we start to get a sense of who we really are. And what I've found really fascinating is that so many people say, I've discovered that I am, I don't know, X or Y, or I've discovered that actually I'm really quite introverted. Masses of people have said that to me, that they thought they were real party people, real, life and soul of the party, real extroverts. But someone on the Sober Club said last week, actually, I've discovered that I'm an extroverted introvert. And other people discover that they really are just actually very quiet, very happy with their own company. And it was just a role they played, this kind of dancing on the tables, drinking the booze. But anyways, along a similar theme, I did a really interesting podcast with Mel Collins, who wrote a great book about highly sensitive people. And I think there were a lot of people who listened to this podcast and suddenly realised, wait a minute, that's me.
Going to be better for the economy all round, isn't it? If leaders and managers can help their staff in exactly the right way for their personality.
Yeah, I mean, what I say to my clients that come to me, because they're just, I get a lot of nurses, for example, a lot of health and social care workers. Basically, they're saying, they just don't understand the trait. And I'm saying, well, take a book in, tell your HR manager, tell your line manager that you're a HSP, just tell them the basic facts about it. And just simple little things in the workplace can make such a difference for HSP. So, for example, we don't thrive well in open plan offices. So, all the computers that are going on, all the noise around us, telephones going there, it can really overstimulate our system. So just even having like your own office can make such a big difference. just having regular breaks. You often see people going out and having cigarette breaks. So for HSPs, I just say, do the same thing. Go and have a nature break, 5 or 10 minutes outside, walk around, ground yourself, do a bit of tapping. We can, if you manage the trait with all the techniques and stuff that I've put in the book, you can thrive as a HSP. It will be less stressful for you at work, because I do think that a lot of stress for HSPs is just unmanaged high sensitivity.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, finally that you would wish that this were taught in schools, because obviously, for children and for teenagers, they're sometimes they're immersed in just technology and social media the whole time, and that can be a form of overstimulation as well, can't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to write about sensitivity in different genres now that can really, especially for school children, as you say. So I've written a picture book for very little ones, because again, they're often mislabeled as shy or introverted, or daydreamers. And actually they're just not, they're just highly sensitive. I think primary school teachers are, because a lot of HSPs themselves go into the teaching profession. So I think we're quite lucky to some extent that I think some primary school children, maybe not in the big cities that are recognised so much, but certainly I know around this area that they are.
That's good.
But yeah, and definitely teenagers, because it's such a difficult age anyway with hormones and everything that's going on for them, but particularly for highly sensitive people. So yeah, I'm trying to spread the awareness as much as possible, and like I said, for HSPs, just the fact that they recognize that actually there isn't anything wrong with them, it is absolutely normal.
It's not a flaw.
It's not a flaw. Actually, it's a real strength and it's a real gift. And that's what I'm really wanted to change Western perception of it. Manage our trait properly. We are the best employees. We're so loyal, hard workers. We give everything. We can just flourish if the trait is understood better.
So check out Mel Collins' book. And of course, one of the amazing people that I was able to interview right near the beginning of the podcast was Annie Grace. She has had such an impact on so many people's lives. Man, if my book can impact on anyone's life, it will be absolutely amazing. But there's no doubt that Annie's work, This Naked Mind, has absolutely done that. She interviewed me for her podcast, and I got to interview her as well, which was great. And what I love about Annie is that she does that kind of logic piece, if you like. So again, she came at this as something of a scientist, and she really looked at the logic piece of ditching the booze as well as where the emotion fits in, and that's where her work, I think, is really fascinating. I did a replay of this podcast. It's episode number 84, if you want to listen to it again. And one thing that we talked about that I thought was worth just playing you this clip again is the fact that we have all these thoughts rolling around in our head. We do get very emotional and very stressed. And one of the things that can stress us out more than anything is what other people are going to say, is how other people are going to react when we tell them we've stopped drinking. How will we be? How will we behave when we have this new identity, and we are taking on a new identity as a non-drinker? How is it going to affect our relationships? So I thought, no better person than to give us some tips on how to navigate relationships than Annie Grace.
One of the things is, you touched on it a little bit when you first give up, and the questions everyone else asks you, the sober shaming, that we all know about. What would be your top tip for anyone who's in those early stages of how you respond to these ridiculous comments that other people throw at you?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what not to do, because I did it, and that is try to posture and evangelize and get into an argument. Because to be honest with you, like, people are doing that. And my top tip is really to understand the motivation behind it. And now, after, helping so many people and hearing so many stories, the motivation behind that is fear. It's a fear of their own drinking, because you're putting a mirror up.
Shining a light on them, aren't you?
Shining a light on them. So like there's some level of discomfort with their own drinking, or it's a fear of losing you and how things used to be. They don't know
losing their drinking buddy. Yeah.
Look like. And so it's based in fear. And if you can really come in and understand that and be like, oh, totally cool. What do you want? Let me get you a beer. I used to do that with my husband. He doesn't drink anymore, but he drank for probably a year and a half after I stopped. And I would be like, what do you want? I'm going to go get him. And I'd always order him a drink. So like I would put it in his hand. So he never felt, I was never going to be sitting there like, because I knew if he made a decision for me, it wouldn't be a decision that was his own. It wouldn't stick. There would be resentment in it. He'd be pleasing me. And it's just not fair. And so just really almost going over the top to say, okay, it's fear. And how can I be of service in this relationship? Should you care about the relationship? If you don't care, just tell them to screw off. And whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
If you do care and you want to continue the relationship, how can you be of service and help alleviate the fear? And I think without falling on your own sword, because I went from evangelizing to like, oh no, it was just me. I was the one with the problem. And then I'd leave and they'd feel fine, but then I'd feel like crap. I'd be like, oh, that wasn't really true. I think everybody has, and so it's kind of in that place of just showing up. And the beauty is that when you push through it and you just show up and you don't have to say anything, the ripple effect of you being present, not drinking, everybody else starts to be like, oh, that's possible.
Exactly.
And then their guard is down. Whereas if you're going to try to tell them that drinking is wrong this is what I did. It causes cancer. Do you know this about alcohol? Oh my gosh. And I'd really go in hard trying to change people's opinions. Nobody changed. But when I changed that and I really went in with I'm just here. You're here. I'm here. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Annie. And Annie Grace did a really lovely endorsement for my book. I was so thrilled that she took the time to read it. So, I was really, really chuffed about that. So thank you to Annie Grace. Talking of happy, healthy, sober, ditch the booze and take control of your life. The foreword in the book is by Denise Welch. I thought, what a great person to write the foreword. She has been sober for... what is it now? I think it's something like 6-7 years. She's been very vocal about it in her, kind of media life. She's been very open about it. And of course, she's been very open about the link between alcohol and depression. And I loved getting Denise on the podcast a while back. The episode was all about her book, The Unwelcome Visitor, and she spoke really openly about her depression. And she also really explained to us this piece about clinical depression, what it really is. And then, but she also underlined the fact that there's no doubt whatsoever that anxiety and depression can be exacerbated by alcohol. And there was a lot in that conversation. We could have spoken for hours about how things need to change in terms of my huge frustration. I'm sure she shares the frustration that not enough is made of this link when we rock up to a GP or whatever, we can be prescribed antidepressants or other medication with really no questions, no discussion about alcohol, and yet the link is there, and it's hugely important. Anyways, I wanted to ask Denise just to tell us a little bit about her take on this link between anxiety and booze.
I just wonder whether you can give us any, and this sounds very flippant in the light of everything we've spoken about, but what would you suggest that people do who do suffer from depression on whatever level? Are there some things that you would recommend people putting in place? What are the strategies that everyone can do? I mean, does walking in nature make a difference? Does the right nutrition make a difference? What about exercise? Are there any of those lifestyle things that can help?
All of those things are things that we should all be doing.
Yeah.
And those things help, I think, how long the unwelcome visitor stays.
Okay.
However, once depression is in, there is no amount of talking, walking, eating, that's gone. What you have to do is my book is called Depression and How I Survive It. And it's about surviving surviving the visits and loving the times in between. So in the good times in between, try to eat well and try to get, even if it's just a walk, and if you are a sufferer, try to take alcohol out of your life if you can. It is the most wonderful life without alcohol.
Yeah.
I know I had Lincoln, and I do know that is easier with somebody. The other thing is, when I was first poorly, there was nothing, as I say, except paragraphs like this in magazines. Now we have Google, and we can Google depression help, and there will be a group, a support group, a community, a person, because I know that getting professional help sometimes in the mental health system is hard, and now harder, but there will be somebody who will listen. And if you find that your GP or your family don't, look further afield.
Yeah.
Please don't think that you have anything to do with getting this illness. It's an illness like any other, and the unwelcome visitor always leaves.
So, as I say, Denise has written the foreword for the book, my book, which is out this week. It's Happy, Healthy, Sober, Ditch the Booze and Take Control of Your Life. And obviously, I'd love it if you would grab a copy, maybe take a pic of yourself holding it. That'd be fun. And you can use the hashtag Happy, Healthy, Sober. And of course, if you're willing to leave me a nice review on Amazon, I would absolutely love that. Make a really big difference. So I'd love to hear your feedback. I really hope the book, makes a difference and impacts on some people's lives. I will offer signed copies as well if anybody wants to kind of, give it as a gift. So just message me if that's something that you're interested in. And as I say, over the next few weeks on the podcast, I hope to be able to bring you some of the guests who've contributed to the book, because some of the pieces are so just really hugely helpful, some of the tips and ideas in there. Some of them, the people in the book have already been on the podcast, but I might invite them back, like Gemma Newman, Plant Power Doctor. She's going to be back on to promote her book as well, to talk about her book. And obviously, I must remind you of the Sober Club. Don't try and do this stuff without connection. And of course, there's lots and lots of different ways to get connection. But if the whole health and wellbeing piece resonates with you, then do check out thesoberclub.com because we cover it all in there. We really do. We have the online course, Get the Buzz Without the Booze, and we have just a huge member portal of content with experts and just a huge range of topics. Plus we have accountability and connection and our meetups, albeit online, of course. Can't wait to get out again and actually meet people. And again, just like the book, it's a real diverse range of things that we cover. This week we've got a grief expert who is going to be obviously helping us, those who've overcome grief. I mean, the link between grief and kind of going back to the booze, I found it to be something that people often tell me has happened, that they lost a parent or they lost a loved one and suddenly drinking seemed like the right thing to do again. But we'll also be looking at dying and looking at our own attitude to our own death, because let's face it, stuff we don't talk about enough, isn't it? So we're going to be doing that as a Q&A in the Sober Club, and obviously I'll bring you an element of that for the podcast too. And then on a completely different note, we've got Joseph James, who's an abundance and money mindset expert, so who again has his own journey with sobriety, so something completely different. So we do kind of cover it all. Don't forget the best you. I've got so much to tell you this week, haven't I? Don't forget the best you. If you're listening to this when the podcast drops, then Saturday the 6th at 10:30. 10:30. The time has changed. It was going to be 11. It's now 10:30. I'm doing my talk at the Best You. That's called Happy, Healthy, Sober. If you go to thesoberclub.com, you'll be able to see how to pick up free tickets for that. And then on Sunday the 7th at midday, that time has changed too, midday, I'm hosting a panel called Does Being Sober Give You Superpowers? And, spoiler alert, it absolutely does. Got some great guests, so I hope you can join me for that. You know where to find me, at Janie Lee Grace, and hashtag Happy, Healthy, Sober, and check out thesoberclub.com. See you next week. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by the Sober Club. Please rate and review. And if you want support, accountability and inspiration, and you want to live your best life without the booze, check out thesoberclub.com.